So that other video was kind of all over the place. I didn't really clearly state much. Like, a few things I do agree with, but a lot of that was just oof. So I'm gonna try again here in this video. So I'm gonna put that in the caption, by the way, don't worry. I'm gonna say this is the better version. The other one is more just kind of like goof with like maybe a few good points sprinkled in. Anyways, I'm gonna try and go in an orderly fashion here. So let's take it from the very beginning, the very first interaction in the Weblum. That episode, it's kind of awkward to me how it was set up, because it was meant to represent race for Keith. That's what it was meant to represent. But a lot of those points that they used were actually more commonly, like, you more commonly find something like that in sexuality. Like how Hunk was saying, like Keith was just saying, I didn't just turn Galra, like, I didn't just turn gay. And the whole thing of, I'm coming out. Of course, that was just dialogue, and you shouldn't just take that out of context if you're looking for canon things. But again, with the episode circumstances, a little bit weird. Kaxca was in that episode, which I also find a little bit weird, because again, I don't think, despite popular theories and stuff, I don't think you can really break down Voltron and find good theories there that actually, like, become a thing. Because as much as I want to say that there is subtext, there probably is not nearly as much subtext as good theory makers suggest there is. So that episode was probably just what it was. It was about race. It was about Keith's race. But it is kind of weird to me the way they represented that. Like I said, the whole I didn't just turn Galra thing, the whole I'm coming out thing, and then also having Kaxca in that episode. It's a little weird, you gotta admit. Kaxca was in that episode, and she wasn't defined, like, she didn't have a character design then, she was just in her suit with the mask on. Keith didn't know her gender, so Keith assumed that she was a male. I can't believe I didn't just say that. Keith assumed Kaxca's gender. That'll be the clickbait of this. Did you just assume my gender? Anyways. Sorry again. Anyways. Keith thought that Kaxca was a guy. Keith was getting the things. He got him down. Kaxca turned a gun on him and took one bag of the little disc things. And then he said, I'm coming out. That's what that episode was. I don't know how to analyze it well because, again, I really do believe that it was probably just meant to be about race. There isn't as much subtext in Voltron as I wish there would be, because it's a kids' show. You can't expect that much of it, especially if it's just like the second or third season. I think that was in the second season. So, just the second season. Probably not as much subtext. So, if that's what they're going to try to do to build up Kaxca, then I don't think it's a good start. Because already you've got Keith thinking that Kaxca is a guy, which is weird if you're going to make Keith straight and you're going to set him up with her. But I mean, whatever, do your thing. And weird that you would use such, like, terms like that instead of having something like, why does it make a difference to you that I'm Galra? Like, I haven't changed. I'm not purple all of a sudden, da-da-da. Instead of the terminology of, I didn't just turn Galra. Like, again, I don't know. Now we're going to move to the next one. Which, this one I find the most interesting, honestly. Of all their interactions beforehand, because there's only 3 interactions that they had before the big romantic Season 7 moment. And that was 1 that we just talked about. 2 was the fight. Like, I'm talking about face-to-face interactions. I'm not talking about every time Kaxca is on screen and then Keith is on screen. I'm talking about when they're actually in the same room together and they have the chance to, like, interact, you know? It's when Keith basically tries to stab her for shooting at Lance. And, again, I'd like to point out that Keith got, like, whole-ass distracted by staring at Lance and smiling while Kaxca ran around him. And I find it interesting that they're going to set Keith up with the person who ran around him while he was swooning at someone else. I find that interesting. But that's yeah. So Kaxca shoots at Lance, And Keith just totally kind of freaks out, but that's kind of his thing. He's a passionate fighter. And he goes, and they have an intense moment of eye contact where they try to stab, like he tries to stab her, and she's getting her gun to block it. Then they make eye contact, their eyes wide, and he recognizes her from the suit and stuff. Now, we didn't get to see what his real reaction would have been to that, but I'm pretty, like, I didn't watch this recently, but I'm pretty sure that the fight got disbanded, somebody kept fighting Kaxca with someone different, or they just kept fighting. So, again, not the best build-up there, but I can see how Voltron would be trying to build it up. I'm not saying it's good writing in the first place at all, because it is not good writing if that's the only things you have backing up your relationship you're trying to pull, because what? But, again, that scene is both rooting against and for Kaxca, because of the moment where he's basically swooning at Lance, and Kaxca just full-ass curves right around him, and goes doing whatever her thing is, versus them making eye contact and him recognizing her. But then, we have their third interaction, which is the throne ceremony thing. Somebody throws something at Keith, I'm pretty sure, and Kaxca shoots it out of the air again. Which is, a thing. So, they make eye contact again. Kaxca does not smile. Keith does not smile. That brings in the point where people are saying, like, the producers, someone up top in the producing company place, the directory, I don't know what to call it, they said that they have a warrior's respect for each other, which I can see that. Like, I don't think any of those three moments were ever romantically coded. So, that would be good foundation for them becoming allies and becoming warrior buddies, which is, honestly, I have mixed feelings about that, because I really want that, but, like, Kaxca is an bro TP versus my no TP at the same time. It's weird. So those are our three interactions before the big one, which is season 7, baby. Oh boy. Alright. Kaxca breaks into Ezor and Zethrid's ship, where they have the Paladins captive. So, Kaxca has somehow found out that they have the Paladins captive after she reveals that they've been gone for 3 years. Now, this could be Kaxca trying to redeem herself by saving the Paladins, which I'm down for, but they really didn't play it well within that episode, because, again, they set her up to be a romantic interest for Keith in that episode, with all the stuff like, oh, it's true love, oh, you would, like, they basically were saying, Ezor and Zethrid were implying that Kaxca would not be there if Keith was not with the Paladins, because the only reason she wants to redeem herself is so that she can get with Keith, which is, oof. I thought we were past this, Voltron. It's 2018. Women can do things because they actually want to redeem themselves, not because they just want to get with one of the guys. Oof. Anyways, it looks bad. Because, again, they're making it appear that Kaxca only gets a redemption arc versus all three of the other generals. She only gets a redemption arc because she's going to end up with Keith. Oof. They say, so Kaxca goes and she helps them break out. I think that Karan helps them break out, yeah? I forgot. I haven't watched the episode because I can't rewatch season 7 yet. It upset me a lot. Not gonna lie. So, she goes, they get out. Keith goes back to save Kaxca. Now, this is a moment where Lance and Keith had a moment again, which is weird to me that Lance seemed so concerned with Keith going back all of a sudden, which, again, founds for me something else that I'll get into some other video this time, but the basis of it is that Lance is worried Keith is going to leave again because there's something going on with the way Lance feels about Keith. Of course, it could just be because Lance is finally realizing, whoa, Keith is a really good guy, I really care about him, he's a good friend, or, whoa, Keith is a really good guy, I really care about him, I think I might have a crush on him. It could be either of those, whatever way you want to take it. Voltron, a lot of things are left open-ended, and sometimes that's really bad writing, but other times it's like, okay, I can see why you did that. So, getting into that moment, he goes back to save Kaxca, and then Ezor and Zethrid bring up how Kaxca might feel about Keith. Now, Kaxca doesn't blush, Keith doesn't blush, Kaxca doesn't, look embarrassed or anything, Keith doesn't look embarrassed or anything. Keith just continues making eye contact with Ezor and Zethrid, and then says, "Can't we just fight?" Now, I don't know how to take this. It might just be because Keith isn't getting it. He doesn't actually think... I think Keith probably in that moment didn't actually get that Kaxca might have feelings for him. I think he probably thought, oh, this is just something they're saying to try and get on my nerves. Which would mean, in my case, that Keith is not interested in Kaxca that way if it would get on his nerves about that. But also, it could be Keith's being we'll talk about this later in a way, we just need to fight right now. We need to prioritize this. Also, it could be that Keith really wants to get back to the ship, back to his paladins, get them out of there. Because versus, people say, oh, Keith went back for Kaxca when he wouldn't go back for Allura in season, 2, 1? One of them. And it's well, in that one, Keith didn't really have the time for it, but Keith realized, oh, I have time for this right now. I can still go back, and she broke us out, so I kind of owe it to her. I think Keith and Kaxca have a relationship where they owe each other a little bit. Because Kaxca, he saved her life. She saved his life again, so he's trying to repay that again with this. So, it could be that. Anyways, he manages to get out with Kaxca. They get back, and then they have this, where they're sitting down at the campfire and they're talking. Now, I think that this could either be romantically coded, or just as another ally letting them in on the information. Because the way Keith looked at her before she said, and it led me to you, it was mostly just concern and oh my goodness, this is good information that I'm getting here. Then he smiled, and he went, thank you for saving us. Which I think could be taken as one, Keith isn't getting it. Keith doesn't realize that Kaxca probably has feelings for him. 2, Keith and Kaxca, they both mutually have friendship feelings. They're I want to be allies with this person. Or 3, Keith is treating Kaxca how, he's seen Shiro treat other people who are allies. He's being, a diplomat, basically. And he's also genuinely grateful that Kaxca saved his life. I think that could be a thing. But also, we have to look at the other side of things. It could be Keith going, oh, this could be a romantic possibility for me. This might be something I want to pursue, but right now there's other matters at hand. But, this could be a thing for me. Which, in my opinion, is disappointing because I don't think that Kaxca had a lot of good build-up. And I've always headcanon Keith as homosexual, which is more of a personal thing, so that's not the basis of my founding for this. The more and more I get into it, the more and more I realize I really don't like Kaxca's romantic dynamic. It doesn't make sense to me, because Keith needs someone who contrasts him versus someone who is, exactly like his old self. Their dynamic doesn't work very well. Neither does their build-up. It doesn't work, in my opinion. No offense to any of the shippers of Kaxca, you do your thing. I'm glad you can find something good in this. But I personally think that Kaxca is not, writing-wise, in canon, it is not well written at all. Anyways, the last scene that we have with Keith and Kaxca in Season 7 is the last episode, where Kaxca is standing behind Keith and Krolia at, also Cosmo, can't forget. It's all K's! No, it's the 3 K's! KKK! Krolia, Keith, and Cosmo! No! Okay, sorry, I had a little realization there. Oh god, oh fuck. Okay. We're moving on. Kaxca standing behind the 3 K's. The family of K's. Anyways, so Kaxca's standing behind them and smiling, and the wind blowing in her hair. Now, I think it is either that Kaxca is, like, happy to have someone to be with again who is, like, a leader to her. Because she's lost Lotor, and now she has, like, Keith to look up to, which, again, I have my own personal issues with that because of the way Voltron treats women now, but that could be what it is. It could also be Kaxca looking fondly at who she thinks is going to be her, like, future significant other. That's also a thing. Also, this one I don't really see the founding for because of the look on her face. Like, it would have been made more sense if there was a conflicted look on her face, or, like, a planning look on her face. But people think that, oh, maybe she's, like, looking onto them like she's going to lure Keith in to bring him to Hagar. And I'm like, I don't really like that. I don't really like that. Not at all. But I think some things about that make sense, but at the same time, as many things that do make sense don't make sense with that theory. So, either way, I want to get into what the producers have said about it. Like I said before, people have said they had a warrior's respect for each other, which I can see in their relationship. I do see respect for there's mutual respect, and there is, like, a sort of trading off of, okay, she saved me, I have to go back and save her now. Now, back and forth, you see? And then I want to get into what Beck said. Now, Beck said that, no, they're not a couple, I view them. I think that the way Beck's phrased that kind of, like, defeats the purpose of that for me. Because that kind of confirms for me that, one, Kaxca is not going to be blatantly endgame. It's going to be implied endgame. Because the way that basically, Bex is not saying, no, it's confirmed that they're not a couple. She's saying, no, I don't view them as a couple, which leaves it open-ended that it's either they weren't represented as a couple, or it was implied endgame, which is what I'm kind of counting on with the way they represented everything in the past seasons. Which is disappointing, again, because it's like, if you're gonna make your shitty endgames, like, a thing, you should just make it blatant. I mean, what's the point? You're gonna lose people either way. But, so, you don't have to worry about it being blatant, but it'll probably be implied. That's basically what I'm saying. And, like, sorry if anybody here is having a hard time with this, but it's better to accept the reality than it is to kind of deny it, I guess. Anyways, I think that Kaxca is either going to be, again, warrior buddies relationship, which is what I'm rooting for, because I think they could have a very good relationship on the terms that they're like a brother and sister sort of relationship. Versus romantic, not so much. Because, again, like I said, Keith needs someone who contrasts him. He can't have someone who is a carbon copy of himself. In more ways than one, actually, because I'll get into that in a second. But, which I think they really did Kaxca's character bad. Like, they didn't give her too much of a deviant personality from Keith's old personality. Which is a classic mood for kids shows to pair. You know how there's always the thing where it's the blue bird and the other blue bird who are together, and then the red bird and the other red bird who are together. It's always the reflection of yourself but in a female version, or yourself but in a male version. And it gets a little tiring, and it's overused and kind of obnoxious and bad writing. But, yeah. I also want to get into looks-wise. Honestly, Keith, Kaxca, and Krolia all look like they could be related. They all look like they could be related. People theorize that Kaxca was Keith's mom when she was first introduced. And I find it weird that they're still going to go with that endgame after there's been so many people who think, oh, Kaxca is Keith's sister, oh, Kaxca is Keith's mom. It's like, oh, but what? excuse me, what? And it's, yeah. Either way, my end theory about it is that, well, it kind of looks like it'll probably either be not clear that, like, it'll be implied with, like, maybe an end scene credit where they're sitting together sharpening a blade, or sitting together looking over plans, sitting together holding hands or looking at each other softly, like in a way that could be perceived both as, like, best friends, allies, or significant others. It'll be open-ended rather than like a strict I think that there's a big possibility that Kaxca could be one-sided or just not actually even there, because there's a big possibility that Kaxca literally just looks up to Keith, you know, in the way that she looked up to Lotor, you know, just the way some people do. Like, she's like, okay, this is a cool dude, I want to follow his side of the war, and I want to kind of get to know him more. Versus another side, which could understandably also be, this guy's cool, I want to be his significant other. It's, again, it's all open-ended. If it really bothers you that much, you probably won't have to, like, again, it could be, like, I'm not saying this is all canon. There's just a lot of different ways to interpret Keith and Aksha's relationship from their interactions. And I've wanted to do an analyzation about it for a while, because their relationship bothers me a lot, the way that Voltron has shown it, rather than what it could have been. Just like Allura and Keith, and, handful of people. But, yeah, I just wanted to talk about it a little, because, you know, analyzations, cool. Wanted to talk about Voltron instead of doing my homework. Again. Either way, I think that this one broke it down a little bit better than the other ones. And this one's longer, too. Holy shit. Had to listen to me talk about Kaxca for 22 minutes and 21 seconds. No, 22. 23. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna end it here with just the thing, like, yeah. Kaxca's an open-ended thing. You could see it as romantic, definitely. They have set it up that way, and I truly believe that they probably are trying to imply that, yes, they are a couple, / they're going to become a couple off-screen, / they're going to become a couple, period. But again, you could look at it and see, oh, another ally, or oh, they're just friends. It's just that way. Again. So, it's all about interpretation. Sorry if a little bit the point got muddled, but yeah. Anyways, epic dab, epic whip, see ya.